Hey there, it's Jeremy Goodrich, owner of Shine Insurance Agency, and today we're going to talk about insurance policies for your tech company. This could be a startup that you're just digging into, or maybe you're getting ready to go public and have an IPO, whatever your situation is, wherever you are in that scale of growth. This quick video is just going to describe how the insurance side works for tech companies. The goal of the video is simple: to make you a little bit smarter about the risks you're taking and how insurance protects you without digging too deep into the weeds and getting all nerdy insurancy. All right, so here we go. What will we cover? Well, we'll start with errors and omissions coverage, one of the most important coverages you have for a tech company. And then we'll talk cyber data breach coverage, super important as well. D&O, if you have a board for your business, every board should have directors and officers coverage, and I'll talk about why. And then I'll talk about common business coverages that just like every business should have, whether it's a mom and pop shop in your downtown square or all the way up to the biggest businesses out there. They're going to have some of these common coverages. All right, let's dig right in. Errors and omissions. So this is coverage for bad things that happen to others because of your advice or decisions. This is like professional liability. The decisions you make obviously affect other businesses. It may be how you build an app or how you connect their design work or their brand work, the marketing work that they do. Whatever it is that you do, you're affecting other businesses or your consumers or other customers as a part of your business model. If your advice fails to succeed and someone gets mad about it, that is where errors and omission coverage could come in. You could hear of this called as professional liability coverage as well. Errors and omissions and professional liability are the same thing. So some examples are that you create a map app and you send someone off an unfinished bridge. That's obviously an extreme example, but certainly that would be an example of how something bad happened. Like I said, you build a site for someone and it turns out that it doesn't do what you said it would do. Now, this happens, of course, all the time. And a lot of times in the advice and work you're doing, you have to try something and then you fix it and make it better and make it better. And most of the time that doesn't turn into some terrible, awful, litigious scenario where people are suing you or whatever. But it can. And so that's why we have errors and omissions coverage. In case it gets to that point, you have protection. Even if you have subcontractors. So if you are kind of GCing the tech work you do, you have other people who are writing code or something like that. Even if their work creates problems, obviously that can come back on you. And so errors and omissions coverage would play in there. So super important coverage to have. It is coverage for bad things that happen to other people because of your advice or decisions. So that's probably the number one most important coverage to have as a tech company. The second most important coverage to have is cyber breach coverage, which is very simply coverage for bad things that happen because of a cyber attack. This could be an attack that affects lots of businesses. This could be one that's specifically espionage against you. They find out something about you and try and hold that over your head for ransom or whatever. There's lots of ways, obviously, that you can be attacked and your data can be breached. And this is the coverage that helps to protect for bad things that happen. Now, there's two parts of this coverage. The first one is damage to you. So things that happen to you, bad stuff that happened to you or your stuff. And the other is obviously bad things that happen to other people because of a breach or a cyber attack that came through your entity, your business, however it came through. So damage to you would be examples like someone locks down your system, right? Like you don't have access to your software, maybe even your hardware. So you've lost access to the things that help you do business. This is damage to you, and cyber coverage can have coverage for that. It's important to say that different policies have different coverage. So again, I'm going over the general things that are covered. When you talk with your insurance agent, whether that's Shine or someone else, ask them what parts of this are and are not covered, and for how much. Those are the details that you get into with your actual insurance agent. Again, I'm giving you the surface concept of what these things are. So your system is locked. You could have lost or corrupted files. Obviously, for tech companies, that could be huge. Also, stolen files could play into that in some way, shape, or form, depending on the scenario. So effects on your files are things that are affected with you, and simply your business can't run because of that. And there can be even coverage for lost income because of that scenario. And finally, your reputation is affected. So somehow this bad thing that happened, you think about the big Experian data breach recently or other data breaches that have happened, it affects your reputation. And with some policies, you can get compensated for that, or you can be compensated by your insurance company for the cost of doing brand work, marketing work to fix your reputation. So those are some of the things. There's also coverage for damage to others. This is what you hear about more often and probably have heard of before. So if you have personal information of millions of users and now someone else does, that is a big breach, a problem, and it's going to affect a lot of things. It's affecting the security of all those people and their information. And so you obviously have to address that. And your policy certainly helps cover the cost of helping everyone else recover their identity, make sure that their identity isn't affected over the course of time, make sure that their, say, credit score or other things are not affected over time, or their information isn't being used for the benefit of the theft or the person who's stealing the information. So those are costs that you absolutely will incur if you have a breach. And it's important to say here, I talk with a lot of people that say, well, I take payment through another provider. I collect some information, but most of that information is somewhere else. There's a different provider that I use. I kind of subcontract them, or I pay them for their services. And that's good. It means you're less exposed than you would be if you were collecting that information on your own systems, but it doesn't stop you from being in lawsuits. And that's sort of the next thing here, being involved in a situation. If someone used you and through paying you, their information was stolen, even if the system that they paid through was not actually your system, you can still be brought into that situation. Again, it's less likely, but it certainly is possible. And cyber breach coverage is going to cover for your defense and even potential payout if it's found that you're liable for something bad that happened to other people. So we're going to defend you. We're going to pay out if there is a payout in the situation as a part of a cyber breach. And so cyber breach data coverage covers both you and your own belongings, as well as damage to other people and their reputation and obviously their pocketbook. So that's cyber breach coverage. The next one that I think is super important for any entity that has a board is directors and officers coverage. And what it is, it's protection for members of a board if something bad happens as a result of a board decision. Now, this could be lots of different examples. The CEO, say, misrepresents the final health of the business to investors. Now, in that example, that might not even be the board that did it, but investors are affected, and the board ultimately is responsible behind that CEO. And so directors and officers coverage could come into play in an example like this for sure. The company sells an asset for significantly below its market value. There's something that seems kind of amiss, and they make a mistake in the way that they navigate that situation. That could potentially come back on the board. They don't act when it's perceived that they should have act. So even sometimes you didn't do anything, but you should maybe have done something to save a business or to help a business make more money or help a business avoid some pitfall that seemed to have been obvious to other people. This coverage is protection for members of a board if something bad happens as a result of a board decision or a decision made around that board. And it is so important to have. It's important because great people are not going to join a board that does not have directors and officers coverage. They simply won't do it because they're exposing their personal wealth by taking on this role. They can actually, and there's lots of examples, case law examples, where personal wealth of people on a board was, became a part of a litigious situation because of decisions made by that board. Directors and officers coverage is protection, not only for the business, but the personal assets of those folks that are on the board as well. So if you want good people on your board, you're not going to get them unless you have directors and officers coverage. And if you are thinking about joining a board, you should ask every single board you ever join, do you have directors and officers coverage as a part of your insurance portfolio? And if they don't, that's not the board that you want to be on. So very simply, every business that has a board should have directors and officers coverage. All right, so real quickly, I'm going to run through the common coverages that are a part of pretty much every business policy out there. So general liability is the most common, and this is coverage for physical bad things that happen to other people because of you. In the previous parts of this video, we talked about professional liability for advice. We talked about cyber and data breach coverage. But if someone trips and falls when they're in front of your business, or they come in and you have an employee that has a dog and the dog bites the person, or something physically happens to them, that's a general liability coverage. Your policy has some general liability coverage to cover the cost of those injuries and the cost of litigation if they were to file a lawsuit against you because of them. The next coverage that's very common is called property coverage, and this is very simply coverage for your stuff, your desks, your chairs, your couches, your computers, all of your belongings inside of your offices are your stuff. That's one part of property coverage. And then the actual building itself, if you own the building, you obviously need to insure it, or if your lease requires that you insure the building, which is fairly common actually, where the person who's leasing you the building says, well, you're responsible for paying for the insurance for the actual building itself. So you get it, your stuff. All right, we're almost there. So work comp coverage. This is coverage for your employees if they get hurt at work. As a tech company, oftentimes these policies are very inexpensive because the risk of getting injured at work is much less than, say, a general contractor who's doing work on people's roofs. That's an expensive type of workers' comp coverage. For tech companies, for the most part, it's an inexpensive work comp coverage. But if someone does get hurt at your office as a part of their employment with you, their health insurance does not cover that. And so you want to make sure that your workers' compensation coverage is in place to take care of that. Finally, commercial auto coverage, which is simply coverage for cars owned by the business. If you don't have any cars owned by the business, you probably won't have commercial auto coverage, although I would say you should have hired and non-owned auto coverage, which is a very inexpensive coverage that just covers if people are using their own personal cars for the business, for use in the business. And the most common example is a founder or CEO or something driving around and talking about their business with other people, all sorts of different things that you could be doing in your personal car. Hired and non-owned coverage covers that. But if you don't have any cars owned by the business, then you won't need the bigger part of the commercial auto coverage. So that's the quick and dirty version of common coverages, stuff pretty much every business should have. Okay, so let's get to our rookie mistake. Here's a huge rookie mistake. If you think that general liability coverage will help with any of your professional or cyber activities, it's very easy to go online and get a cheap insurance policy and think, hey, I covered the bad stuff that could happen. And you accidentally get general liability coverage because it's kind of the one that's out there on all policies. And you think that's going to help with your online advice. You think that's going to help with a cyber attack. And it simply is not. General liability for a tech company is actually probably the most limited coverage of the different liability options, right? It's just for if people trip and fall or get physically hurt. So it's a rookie mistake to think that that's going to cover you for a bunch of stuff. All right, so what did we cover? Well, we hit errors and omissions, professional liability coverage for bad advice, if that's to happen, cyber and data breach coverage for if something bad happens with someone breaching your system, directors and officers coverage, protecting the board if decisions are made that are perceived as incorrect and negatively affect the business, and finally, a common package of coverages that pretty much all businesses have, general liability, property coverage, workers' compensation coverage, and commercial auto coverage. So that's it. If you want to hear more from us, please do check out our Shine channel. The work comp audit video describes audits in general, something super important for tech companies to understand, by the way, because you're such a high growth industry that you can really get burned by an audit, not only a work comp audit like this video talks about, but a general liability audit or a professional liability audit as well. We also have a podcast. It's on our YouTube channel as well if you want to check that out. We interview entrepreneurs, business owners who started from scratch and built a healthy, profitable business. I dig in with them and ask them all the things that they've learned, the successes and failures they've had, and so on and so forth. So check that out. Finally, if you need insurance, if you made it this far into the video, we are 16 minutes into the video right now. If you made it this far, you are the exact type of person that we love to work with. Someone who wants to understand their coverage, wants to make sure that it's the smartest coverage they can get and at a reasonable price that is fair. And we're going to do both of those things for you, advise you and walk you through the process. Our goal is always to be a member of your business team that you think, oh man, I'm so glad I have Shine on my team. And that's what we'll do for you. So if you want to connect with us on insurance, please head over to shineinsurance.com. You can find our phone number if you want to just give us a buzz, or there's obviously an online application that you can kind of dig in at that level, whatever works for you. All right. Well, it's been awesome talking with you. I hope that you understand tech insurance just a little bit better. Even if you never dig too deep into your policies, at least you understand it right now. It was a joy talking with you. Please do feel free to ask your questions in the comments below. We always write back and try and give you as much information as possible. Until the next time, have a wonderful day.